Hi, everybody. It's Daniel Stiller from Better Rhodes. And today I'm here with Angus Lugsdin of Selcombe Distillery, Selcombe Distilling, and they are the makers of New London Light. Angus, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so great for you to join us. The I'm really excited about bringing your product over to the North American market. It's been really well received, and one of the things that a lot of what feedback we got from our customers is it speaks to the quality of the product. And one of the things I'd love to share with the customers or those of you who haven't tried New London Light is just the experience of the bottle itself. It's a beautiful bottle, and it tells the history of the actual product. And that to me is one of the really inspiring things. Is it's a focus on quality, a focus on history, and the entire process of bringing a great product like New London Light to the market. And Angus, I'd love for you to just kind of to speak to the history of New London Light and of Selcombe and how this product came about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, God, it's a kind of where do I start? So, Salcombe is a beautiful coastal town in the southwest of Devon, and Devon's in right down the southwest part of England. It's about 20 miles from Plymouth along the coast, and it's kind of the easiest way to describe Salcombe. It's a bit like the Hamptons of the UK, with a little bit of Cape Cod thrown in, probably. So that kind of sets the scene in terms of this stunning coastal town. These days it's known for more for its sailing, and its kind of aspirational kind of lifestyle and vibe. As I say, it kind of vies as being one of the most expensive places to buy a second home in the UK. But it's a natural port. But historically, it was very famous for something called Salcombe fruiters, and these were fruit schooners, sailing vessels that were all built in Salcombe and some of the neighbouring coastal towns. That in their heyday, which was roughly between 1820 and 1880, they were responsible for importing up to 80% of citrus fruits and spices into England's ports, mainly into London, Liverpool, Bristol, Hull and Southampton. And they traded all over the world, but with a very big trade in the Mediterranean, carrying citrus, herbs, spices, wine, and also the Azores. At the time there was a big orange trade, and then also from the Caribbean as well, and they were carrying pineapples, spices and rum back to the English shores. And at the time then, pineapples, for example, were the luxury status symbol of their day. The best specimens would go for £1,000 in Covent Garden Market, and
that's in the 1820s.
Yeah. Well, so that would probably be about 1860 when they were going for that. But they used to sail up the Thames, and it was always a kind of a pride who could get there first and who had the biggest pineapple. So they used to pin the largest pineapple they had on the end of the jib boom of the sailing vessel to announce their arrival. And they used to all land at St Catherine's Dock in London. So we actually, so it was really famous then for that. As I said, these days it's slightly different. We also have a very strong crab and lobster fishing industry in Salcombe, and brown crabs exported all around the world, particularly over to Asia. But when we were developing the brand, Salcombe Distilling Company is the brand, but we have two kind of brands: Salcombe Gin, which we're kind of very well known for our alcoholic gin, and now more so for our non-alcoholic spirit, New London Light, or NLL, as people see on the bottle. And as we were developing the brands, we were researched. There's a maritime museum in Salcombe, and there on the walls are these beautiful oil paintings of these fantastic vessels, and those were the Salcombe fruiters. And they had amazing names as well: Daring, Phantom, Arabella, Mischief, which we've named after some of our gins after. And when we were researching, we found a lot of the cargo manifests, and could see what they were carrying and where they were carrying it from. So the
original manifests of the
original manifest,
of the fruiters.
scanned in copies of the original manifests.
Yeah.
And So we were able to trace back, what they carried, and then to this day, we use some of those botanicals and spices that used to be carried aboard the Salcombe fruiters in our products.
Oh, it's fantastic. So there's a real kind of tie to the tradition of the town, and that
Absolutely.
carries through.
I was saying, you mentioned the bottle, tells the story on the bottle, and that's exactly what we do. So, New London Light, and I'll get onto the naming behind that. But if you just look at for those who've seen the bottle, there are a number of little kind of icons. So the main label wraps around the bottle in the shape of something called a pennant or gin pennant, and traditionally this is a symbol of hospitality that's been flown by sailors and the Navy for years. And when it's hoisted, normally, in the case of gin, it means please come on board and join us for a gin and tonic on board. So it's that shape that wraps around the bottle. And then on the inside of the label is a nautical chart of the Salcombe fruiter trading routes. So you can actually look on the inside of the bottle and see where they are carrying from. And in this case, with New London Light, there was a lot of trade over to the eastern seaboard of the US. And obviously the New London Light, New London Lighthouse in New London, marks, it was one of the natural deep water harbours that they would use in their passages.
Oh, the bottle tells the story, and the quality of the bottle is very much representative of the quality of the product in the bottle, and you can experience that, and I think but to truly experience the product, I think you know what, Angus, I'd love you to coach us through how to truly enjoy New London Light.
Yeah. So for us, it's always about taste, regardless of what we're producing, and we are, a distilling company. So we took what we know about gin and how to extract flavors and aromas from botanicals, and we wanted to create a non-alcoholic spirit that was every bit as good, if not better sometimes, than our gins. And one of the reasons for that is, I think, whatever your reasons for not drinking or wanting to reduce your intake of alcohol, that doesn't really matter. The thing is, we don't want people to miss out. We want people to have that same ceremony, that same experience that you have when you pour yourself a drink, whether that be in the evening or at lunchtime or wherever it is. That experience when you get your right glass and you get your ice and you use a nice copper jigger and you pour yourself a measure of it, and then you add your tonic or soda and your garnish, and that sound when you're putting the ice in the glass and the sound when the bubbles are coming in the tonic, it should be the same, and the aromas coming out of the glass should be just every bit as good as if you're having an alcoholic beverage. And I think everyone's, particularly in the last 12 months of people with various lockdowns in parts of the world, a lot of people have drunk more, but those people that have drunk more, I would say myself included, have also recognised the need to moderate but not want to miss out at the same time.
Yeah.
I often say to friends, I come from a distilling background. I have a love of wine and spirits and the processes that go into creating them and the stories behind them as well, which to me it's always about story and taste, because you make that moment special. But I definitely find now I pour myself one or two New London Light and tonics, and then I might have a glass of wine with dinner. So I've already kind of reduced my intake, and I probably get more enjoyment out of the wine as well. So to enjoy kind of New London Light, we were very much thinking about this when we were developing it. So, as I said, we came from it from a point of view that we are distillers. So it's inspired by gin making principles, and this is the first non-alcoholic spirit that we released. We're currently working on another two variants for launch later this year. But this one is definitely inspired by gin, because that seems like a pretty sensible place for us to start. But it's not always that easy actually to get some of those same properties across gin, because juniper is quite difficult without having alcohol to carry that flavour and aroma. So actually, we did what not many people do. We created the base spirit in the same way that we would create gin.
I think by saying you're a distiller first, I think you miss, or I love our audience to actually really think about the fact that he's more than just that. He's a storyteller, and part of that story is the process and telling the story of the Salcombe fruiters and of that manifest, and that storytelling is on the bottle, but it's also in the liquid itself, and you're not using a pen, but you're using your distillation process, and that's and I think that, and like you said, it's to tell that story without alcohol is actually incredibly difficult.
So with New London Light, we're obviously distilling it as we would with a gin. So we're using the same core principles of distillation, which is essentially we start with using heating and cooling to separate alcohol from water. So obviously for a gin, we're adding all the botanicals during the distillation process, and heating up the liquid, and as it converts to vapours, we're obviously carrying those botanicals across. And we start New London Light in exactly the same way. So we're using the same gin making principles, and we start with juniper as our base. Essentially, as I said, New London Light, this first one is inspired by gin making principles, so we want to have that juniper in there. Then we're also using ginger and capsicum, so from habanero chilies, because obviously without the end product, without having alcohol in, we want to try and replace some of that bite, some of that mouthfeel that alcohol gives a product. So we take this distillate that we've created, which is essentially a gin, because we've got for gin to be gin, it has to, the dominant botanical must be juniper, and we've got juniper, ginger, capsicum, and then we add to that a number of other botanical extracts, distillates, not all distillates, but botanical extracts from other botanicals. Now, each different botanical, in order to extract the best of that aroma and flavour, requires a different kind of method, effectively a different cooking method to extract those flavours. So some of them are distilled in the same way. Some of them are distilled under vacuum, so it requires a lower temperature, so you protect and preserve all those aromas and flavours. Some are required from steeping the botanicals and effectively macerating the botanicals. And then when they're all blended together, then essentially they're diluted. And that's how we're not stripping out the alcohol by another method. We're diluting it down to so effectively there's only a trace element of alcohol left. So, but what we're doing differently to gin is we're starting with super concentrated, a much larger quantity of botanicals, so that when we do dilute, we still have all that flavour and aroma.
So it's a much more complicated and complex process to make the alcohol-free version.
Yeah, it's far more complicated and far more expensive to make a non-alcoholic spirit. I say that to make it with the same approach, the same handcrafted attention to detail and passion. Yes, there are brands out there, tend to be much bigger brands, that produce this stuff will be produced in a chemical factory. We're not about that. We're about in that same meticulous craft, and there's no reason, as I said early in the interview, I wanted people to not miss out, have that same ceremony and that flavour experience. And there's no reason that you have to have alcohol to have that experience. It's just more difficult to get those flavours and aromas because some botanicals really require alcohol as a solvent to get those and to carry those aromas and profiles. So actually in New London Light, we've got botanicals that we haven't historically used in our gin that come across really well, things like lemongrass and the ginger and some of the spices, because they are easier to deliver on that aroma and flavour than ones that we require a kind of higher level of alcohol to do so. But it's the same. It's the same kind of care and attention that goes into creating this. In some ways, perhaps even more, because it's just more complicated. And I know that some people in the market, when they're starting to look at non-alcoholic spirits, there is definitely an education piece required, because a lot of people are thinking, well, it's just a flavoured water, isn't it? By definition, if it's a non-alcoholic spirit, and if you look at the main ingredient and it says water, I can understand the first impression, but essentially think of it as a gin without paying the duty or the taxes. That's kind of essentially what it is, in terms of the only difference to this is it hasn't got the alcohol in, but the process to create it and to maintain and trap those aromas and flavours is more expensive, time consuming, requires a lot more thought than straightforward distillation of gin or similar spirit.
And Angus, I think that really resonates with a lot of the kind of Better Rhodes community, their own personal experience, because just going to a party, it's much easier just to come with a bottle of alcohol or beer or wine. To choose to moderate or to choose to have a non-alcoholic beverage, it is a more difficult process. You actually have to explain yourself more. You have to. There's a lot more pain. I don't want to say pain, but it's a lot more difficult process. It can be incredibly rewarding, but it is a process, and that's kind of what we're trying to do at Better Rhodes, is make that change that conversation from why aren't you drinking to what are you drinking. And I think New London Light does a great job of that, where you have the complexity of the flavor. If you pay attention to the drinking, to actually the flavor profiles, and if you experience it in the right glass with chilled with the right tonic, you really can experience that. And I referred to it earlier, is that storytelling in the liquid. Like you can start to appreciate the fruiters, like you can, the coastal town. I think you really, that really resonated with me.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point, because when you take a bottle to a party, or the equivalent when you order at the bar, it used to be that people would, you'd be ordering around, and then it would be like lowered tone. Could I just have the tonic, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just don't put the gin in that one.
Yeah.
And actually, we want to flip it on its head, and we want people to talk more loudly. I'll have 3 gin and tonics and a New London Light and tonic, please.
Yeah.
So actually, people kind of hear you and say, oh, what's that? And of course, it's striking behind the bar as well. So then people engage in conversation and talking about it. It's like, well, this is fantastic. I've got all these flavors. And we always say it's kind of clarity of mind. So one of our kind of taglines is clarity is everything. It's clarity of thought, clarity of decision, and obviously in the following morning, clarity.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you haven't overindulged, but it's having that. You're not missing out. You're proud of what you're drinking. It's no longer some people feel embarrassed because they're not having an alcoholic drink. Peer pressure of I need to be having a beer, I need to be having a glass of wine, and the non-alcoholic offerings for a lot of places still are pretty meager. It's kind of I don't want to drink a fruit juice or I want a proper drink. I just don't want alcohol in it.
And I think that was, and we see a lot of that innovation now as with new producers in the marketplace, is they're speaking to, there's innovation around the sophistication of the product. And we want, and again, we're at, in many ways, we're trying, like the people who are choosing to moderate or choosing an alcohol-free lifestyle, is they're innovators. They're going against the norm, and they want to have, I think, they want better selection and better solutions, and we at Better Rhodes see that and love, to bring to New London Light to the market, to really show the innovation and sophistication that's happening in the space as a whole.
And that's where the name came from as well. The New London Light. So new because it is new and innovative and fresh. The London, that makes the link to gin, and the London dry process of standard, London dry standard of distillation. Making that link. We're using gin making principles to make a fantastic spirit, and the light because it's non-alcoholic and very low on calories.
Yeah.
So those three stitched, and then it just so happened that we link it into Lighthouse just like we do with our alcoholic products as well.
Yeah, and that, and I think we're headquartered in a coastal town, Madison, Connecticut, and actually relatively close to the New London Light. So, I think that's what really resonates and that's what I tried to bring forward earlier is the storytelling in the process. This isn't just about putting a liquid in a bottle. It's about a tie to the history of the distillate of gin, tying to the history of Salcombe, and in creating this great experience for people who are brave enough to make that choice and choosing to moderate and choosing to try something different. And definitely let's celebrate it. Let's show off the bottle. Let's ask for it out loud. And I love what was the shape is the gin. Not pennant, but
it's a gin pennant. So
pennant. It is the gin pennant. Yeah,
it's a pennant. Yeah. So as I said, it's been flown by sailors to this day. It's normally green, white, and green with a glass in the middle, and it's a symbol of hospitality. And literally, when it's hoisted, it means please come on board and join us for a drink. So,
well, maybe that'll be our next initiative. Is we'll do a gift with purchase with a pennant, but. Definitely, for those listening in today, give New London Light a try. But really, and when you're doing it, right glass, a chilled tonic, and take the time to sit back and enjoy the process, and then get your flag out and share it with friends, and make sure that you also partake in the history of hospitality that surrounds the product. So. With that, Angus, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing with the Better Rhodes community the New London Light story, and we're looking forward to celebrating it some more. Thanks a lot.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.